She entered the CEO's office by mistake, but what she saw made him freeze and never let her go. She opened the wrong door, and what she saw made the most powerful man in the building freeze. No one ever walked into his office by accident. No one ever looked at him like that. She was just the new girl. But from that moment on, he couldn't let her go. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. You're not supposed to be in here. The words cut through the thick silence like glass shattering on marble. Kate froze, her hand still on the sleek silver door handle, her cheeks already burning. The room smelled of leather, cologne, and quiet power. Definitely not where she was supposed to be. Her heels had clicked too far down the wrong hallway. She'd been looking for the conference room. Somehow, she'd found the CEO instead, but it wasn't the commanding voice that stopped her breath. It was the photo. Right there on the dark walnut desk, between a crystal paperweight and a closed leather notebook, stood a small silver frame. Simple, elegant, almost hidden, and inside it an old photo, a woman holding a child. The woman's face blurred slightly with age, but her expression, open, laughing, unguarded, looked hauntingly like Kate's. The CEO followed her gaze. His expression didn't shift, not quite, but something behind his eyes flickered, then disappeared. Richard Hale was known for many things: brilliance, discipline, and emotional unavailability. Not for freezing, but here he was, silent, still. "I'm so sorry," Kate whispered, stepping back toward the door. It's my first day. I was told to bring the launch reports to—" "That's next door," he said. His voice had softened, but not completely. Kate nodded quickly, gripping the manila folder to her chest like a life vest. She turned to leave, the embarrassment blooming down her neck. But before she could close the door behind her, his voice stopped her again. "Wait!" She turned. Richard's eyes were no longer cold, just unreadable. "What's your name?" She blinked. Kate Bennett. I'm the new junior marketing assistant." He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "Thank you, Kate." He didn't smile, didn't offer small talk, but something about the way he said her name made her heart thump louder than it should have. She shut the door gently and leaned against the wall outside. Exhaling, well, so much for blending in. By noon, the story had already spread through 3 departments. "Did you hear? The new girl walked into Mr. Hale's office like she owned the place." "No. What happened? Did she get fired?" "Worse?" He asked for her name. Whispers passed between lips painted with lipstick and sarcasm. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with pity, a few with envy. By 1:30 p.m., someone had dubbed her the Office Cinderella. At least 3 people asked if she was dating him. Kate kept her head down and tried not to laugh or cry. She was just trying to do her job, her very average, behind-the-scenes job. Nothing about her life had ever been dramatic or glamorous, just real and quiet. Like the tea her late grandmother used to brew, warm, a little strong, and never quite sweet enough. Speaking of tea, she sat in the quiet break room, sipping from the company mug with the chipped rim. Her sandwich sat untouched. She was still too jittery to eat. A voice broke the silence. "Mind if I sit?" It was Trina from HR, 40-something, full of bold lipstick and a heart that saw more than it said. Kate gestured to the chair. "Of course." Trina sat, unwrapping a sad-looking tuna salad. "So, first day and already breaking corporate hearts?" Kate laughed, nervous and grateful. It was a mistake. Trina grinned. "All the best stories start that way." Back in the marketing bullpen, Kate did her best to disappear. She typed reports, organized data sheets, checked launch assets. The hours ticked by, each quieter than the last, until her phone blinked with an internal message from her supervisor. Mr. Hale requested you bring the revised mock-ups to his office. Directly. 4:45 p.m. Don't be late. Kate stared at the message. Once, maybe, was a coincidence, but twice? Her stomach twisted. She slipped the mock-ups into a folder and walked, slower this time, back up the executive floor. The silence up there was a different kind of loud. Every step felt like a question. She knocked lightly. "Come in." His voice didn't sound annoyed, or anything really. She stepped inside. This time, She didn't look at the photo, but she could feel it like a song stuck in her chest. Richard stood by the tall window, city lights flickering behind him. He turned only slightly when she entered, gesturing toward the low coffee table. "Set them there." She obeyed. Silence stretched. It should have felt awkward, but it didn't. Maybe it was the way he kept looking at the skyline, like he was searching for something he'd lost long ago. "You remind me of someone," he said suddenly. She looked up. "I saw the photo. I'm sorry. She was my sister," his voice barely carried. "That's her son, my nephew." Kate felt her breath catch. He looked so happy. He was. A pause. "She died 5 years ago. Car accident. The boy lives with his father now, out of state." Kate's voice was quiet. "I'm sorry." He finally looked at her. Really looked. And for a heartbeat, they weren't boss and employee, just two people with old wounds that hadn't quite healed. Then the door opened. "Mr. Hale," a sharp voice called. It was Eliza, his executive assistant, impeccable, efficient, and clearly surprised to see Kate. Kate stepped back quickly. "I was just leaving." But as she passed, Richard said, "Kate, wait." She turned. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a silver bookmark. Simple, elegant, a delicate vine engraved on the edge. "My sister used to make these," he said. "One of the few things I kept." He held it out. "Here. For the mistake you made." That wasn't really a mistake. She took it carefully, almost afraid to touch it. I can't accept this." "You already did," he said quietly. Kate stepped out into the hall, the bookmark warm in her palm, her heart beating somewhere far too high in her chest. As the door clicked shut behind her, she didn't see Eliza standing perfectly still in the office, nor did she hear the faint buzz of a phone camera just around the corner, quietly capturing something it shouldn't. Kate sat on the edge of her bed, still in her cream skirt and light blue blouse, the silver bookmark resting in her open palm. It caught the lamplight, delicate vines twisting along its edge, soft but precise. She turned it over once, then again. Why would he give her something so personal? The gesture hadn't felt romantic, but it hadn't felt formal either. Not exactly. It felt like something left unsaid. A small weight pressed into her hand, not just out of kindness, but recognition. Recognition of what, though? She tucked the bookmark inside the novel on her nightstand, a weathered copy of Little Women she reread every winter, and closed the cover gently. Kindness never walks in on purpose, she thought. Well, whatever she'd walked into, it clearly wasn't going to stay quiet. The next morning, the shift in energy was instant. When she stepped off the elevator, it felt like the air had a temperature, and she was standing in the middle of it. Conversations stopped a beat too early. Smiles were stiff. One woman from finance offered a half nod, then whispered something to the woman beside her. Kate kept walking. She passed the conference room where she'd been headed yesterday, now unmistakably labeled in clean silver letters, and forced herself to smile at her reflection in the elevator glass. She looked the same, but clearly something had changed. At 10:30, Trina appeared with 2 coffees and dropped into the chair beside Kate's desk like they were old friends. "Guess what?" she said, placing a warm paper cup next to Kate's keyboard. "You're trending." Kate winced. "What did I do now?" Trina took a sip, watching her over the rim. You were seen coming out of Hale's office yesterday. Eliza was also seen not thrilled about it. Kate blinked. That's nothing. He gave me a bookmark. Trina choked slightly on her drink. A what? A bookmark, Kate said, reaching into her purse. She hesitated, then showed it, just briefly. Trina narrowed her eyes at the delicate silver. Well, that's, strangely poetic. It belonged to his sister, Kate said, her voice soft. She passed away. It meant something to him. I shouldn't have accepted it. But Trina shook her head slowly. Maybe it meant something to you, too. Don't discount that. Before Kate could respond, Eliza strode past, perfectly dressed, perfectly unreadable, her heels tapping like punctuation marks on polished tile. She didn't look at Kate, but Kate felt it. The silence was no longer awkward, it was sharp. That afternoon, as Kate returned from delivering print assets, she found a single envelope on her desk. No name, just her first initial in cursive, K. Inside was a handwritten note. You're not fooling anyone. Stay in your place. There was no signature. Her hands trembled as she folded it and slid it into her drawer. She said nothing, but the moment didn't go unnoticed. Hey, said Michael, the intern across from her. Barely 21, all freckles and anxious energy. Are you okay? Kate smiled too quickly. Yeah, just tired. He nodded, unsure, and went back to his spreadsheet. But from that moment on, she felt eyes following her. Not Richard's, everyone else's. At 3:15, her phone pinged with a calendar invite. 5-minute check-in, R. Hale. No location, just the time. She hesitated. 5 minutes. She took the elevator at 4:29. This time, his office felt different. Richard was standing by the bookshelf, sleeves rolled to his forearms, reading something leather-bound and dense. When she entered, he didn't look up immediately. Close the door, she did, gently. I didn't mean to cause problems, she said quietly. He turned. You didn't. I think someone left a note on my desk. His brow furrowed slightly. A note? She hesitated, then handed it to him. He read it once, twice. His jaw tightened. I'll handle this. There's nothing to handle, Kate said quickly. I didn't want you to think I was manipulating me, he asked, gently. Kate looked away. I didn't know who you were when I walked in. Richard set the note down on his desk and reached into the bottom drawer, the same one where the bookmark had come from. This time, he pulled out something else. A small blue velvet box. Kate's breath caught. I'm not giving you jewelry, he said with the faintest ghost of a smile. He opened the box. Inside was a pin, a simple silver leaf, almost the same vine pattern as the bookmark. She made one for every member of the family, he said. My mother wore hers every Sunday. Kate stared at it. Why are you showing me this? Because someone is trying to intimidate you, he said, and they should know you're not alone. I don't belong in your world, she said, her voice soft but steady. He didn't answer that. Instead, he placed the box gently on the desk between them. Wear it. Don't wear it. It's up to you. There was a long pause. Kate picked up the pin. Her fingers brushed the cool silver. I'll think about it, he nodded. That's all I'm asking. She turned to leave. Her hand was on the door, then stopped. A quiet voice behind her. Eliza's not the one who took the photo. Kate turned slowly. Photo? Richard's expression was unreadable again. Someone took a picture of you, leaving my office. Her stomach dropped. How do you know? Because this morning, someone sent it to our board. Kate didn't remember how she got back to her desk. Somewhere between Richard saying the board and her feet finding the hallway, her brain had turned to fog, the kind that swallows time. By the time she sat down, the office felt colder, even though the thermostat hadn't changed. Someone had taken a photo of her, and someone had sent it to the board. She stared blankly at the spreadsheet in front of her. The numbers didn't mean anything. The names didn't mean anything. Only one thought rang in her head. They think there's something going on. And worse, maybe she'd let it look that way. At 6:12 p.m., long after most of the office had cleared out, Richard stood in the corner of a dim conference room, his hands braced against the glass. 3 board members, 1 flat speakerphone, a file named Internal Comms, Concern Photo, Urgent. The voice on the line crackled. "Richard, we don't care about your personal life, but if it affects brand confidence, that's another matter." "There is no personal involvement," he said. "Then why was the junior assistant in your office twice in one day?" Richard closed his eyes briefly. "Because I asked for her." A beat of silence. "You asked for her?" "To review a sensitive project mock-up. She performed well. That's all." "You know the press, Richard. Optics." He didn't answer. Another voice added, "We suggest you resolve it quietly. Reassign her. Create space. Make it disappear." Richard's jaw clenched. He looked down at the desk. His fingers rested against the edge of a printed agenda and a corner of something else. The photo. Not the one that had been taken, the old one. His sister and her son. Still smiling, still holding joy like it didn't break. He reached for it quietly and turned it down. Face to the table. "I'll handle it," he said at last. The next morning, Kate arrived early. Too early. The office was still quiet, that liminal hour where the carpet still held yesterday's footsteps, and no one had put on their work faces yet. She made herself tea in the break room, peppermint, too strong, and sat with both hands wrapped around the mug. She wasn't sure if she was angry, or afraid, or just tired. Tired of being looked at like she was something she wasn't. She reached into her bag, searching for a pen, and her fingers brushed metal, the bookmark. She pulled it out slowly, and, for reasons she couldn't explain, she placed it inside her company notebook. Like armor. At 10:07, her manager called her into a side meeting. Nothing formal, just awkward. "Hey, Kate," said John, shifting in his seat. "So, there's been some chatter." Kate nodded. "I know." "It's not about fault, okay? Just optics. Leadership's asking for a little space between departments while it calms down." "I haven't done anything wrong." "I know," he said quickly. "You've actually done great. It's just, look, I'm supposed to tell you not to go up to Hale's floor for a while, unless it's, like, absolutely necessary." Kate blinked. "You're grounding me?" He winced. "Not you. The situation." By noon, the silence had changed flavors. No more whispers, just distance. Emails stopped CCing her on things she used to be part of. Meetings were rescheduled without her. At lunch, even Michael from across the aisle looked unsure whether to sit near her. Trina, bless her, came over anyway. 2 cups of soup this time, lentil, and something she called emotional recovery. "They're scared of him," Trina muttered between bites. Kate stirred her soup slowly. "Why?" "Because he doesn't answer to anyone, and now for once he's showing interest in someone who isn't already in his circle." Kate laughed bitterly. "If that's what this is, I wish he hadn't." Trina paused. "Do you?" Kate didn't answer, but when she looked down at her notebook, the silver bookmark glinted softly in the corner. She closed it. It was after 6 again, when Kate heard her name. She'd been finishing a report, half thinking about what leftovers might be in her fridge, when the voice startled her. "Kate?" She turned. Richard stood just past the cubicle divider, looking distinctly out of place among the bland office lighting and cluttered desks. No one else was around. Most had left early for some company happy hour. "I need a moment. Walk with me?" Kate hesitated. "You're not in trouble," he added quietly. She followed him. They ended up outside. In the quiet rooftop garden, most employees forgot existed. The air was crisp, and the sky was blushing orange. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "For what?" "For letting this happen, for letting you take the hit." She looked at him. "You didn't send the photo." "No, but I let it circulate, and I didn't shut it down fast enough." Kate exhaled, her hands tucked into her coat pockets. It's not your job to protect me. He looked at her fully. Isn't it? A beat. You gave me something personal, she said. That bookmark, it wasn't nothing. No, it wasn't. I don't want to be someone's mistake. You're not, he said. Then softer. But I might be. Kate's breath caught in her throat. Then he reached into his inside coat pocket and pulled something out, folded neatly in thirds, a printed photo of her leaving his office. He held it out. They wanted me to reassign you, distance, make this disappear. And? I told them no. She stared at him. Why? He looked down at the photo, then back at her. Because I haven't forgotten the look in your eyes the first time you saw her. He didn't mean Eliza. He meant the photo, his sister. There was a long, still moment between them. Wind caught the corner of the paper in his hand. Then he did something no one would have expected. He handed her the photo. You decide what to do with it. Kate held the photo between her fingers, the corner lifting ever so slightly with the breeze. The image was sharp, clearly her, clearly leaving his office, clearly alone. Too easy to twist into something it wasn't. She didn't speak right away. She simply looked at it, and then looked up at him. You should have destroyed this. I thought about it, Richard said, but then I thought, maybe you should decide what it becomes. Kate folded the photo in half, neatly, slowly, then once more, and slipped it into her coat pocket. Not out of fear, not even to protect him. Because she'd decided she would not be defined by what people thought they saw. I'll keep it, she said softly, not because it's true, but because it's not. His expression shifted, something unreadable behind the quiet approval. She turned to go, but then paused. I'm not sure you understand what you've started. I do. No, you don't. She looked at him fully now. I walked into the wrong room on my first day. That's all. But now I'm a rumor, a story, a woman people whisper about. If you care at all, really care, you won't make it worse. His voice was calm. What if I want to make it better? Kate shook her head. Then start with yourself. And she left him standing there under the soft glow of a rooftop lamp, holding nothing. Back at her desk, a sticky note was waiting. Conference room B, now. Kate's heart sank. Eliza. She found her there, alone, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Kate stepped in and closed the door. I'm not here to fight, she said. Good, Eliza replied, because I don't have the energy. The older woman sighed, took off her glasses and gestured to the chair. Kate sat. There was silence between them. Then Eliza said something Kate didn't expect. I was the one who mentored Richard when he first stepped into his father's role. He was 28, raw, angry, untrusting. Kate blinked. He doesn't seem... No, he doesn't. That's because I taught him how not to. Kate said nothing. Eliza leaned forward. I've spent 10 years keeping his world controlled. Now you show up, and in 1 week, I see him distracted, slipping, softening. Is that a bad thing? Eliza tilted her head. Not for him, but for the company? For the structure we've built? For the blood I've given it? You think I'm trying to hurt him? Eliza's voice dropped. I think you don't realize how powerful you already are. That sentence sat heavy in the air. Kate took a breath. I don't want his power, or yours. Then why are you still here? Kate stood slowly. Because I earned this job, and I'm not walking away from it just to make other people comfortable. She turned to leave, then stopped, and added gently, maybe the problem isn't that he's softening. Maybe the problem is he needed to. That evening, as she packed up to leave, someone cleared their throat behind her. Kate turned. It was Michael, the intern. He looked sheepish. Hey, I saw the board email by accident. I was fixing formatting for a deck, and the alert popped up on one of the shared accounts. I didn't mean to see it. Kate blinked. You don't have to explain. I know you didn't do anything wrong." She smiled, caught off guard. "Thank you." He hesitated. "Also, someone printed it." Her heart thudded. "Printed what?" "The photo. It was in the staff lounge, taped to the coffee machine." Kate's stomach turned. Michael raised both hands quickly. "I took it down. I ripped it up. I swear." Kate closed her eyes. "Kate?" Just for a second. "Thank you." He lingered, then added, almost like a child offering a Band-Aid, "I made you a coffee." He handed her a cup, her name scribbled on the side in a wobbly heart. Kate couldn't help it. She laughed. And in that tiny, unexpected moment, her first real laugh all week, the knot in her chest loosened. Later that night, as she curled up in bed with Little Women and opened to her saved page, the silver bookmark slid into her lap. It shimmered faintly in the lamplight. The same twisting vine, the same weight of something gently offered, never pushed. She ran her finger over the engraved edge. He had given it to her without condition, without pressure. And despite everything swirling around them, the gossip, the manipulation, the mistrust, it was the one thing that still felt honest. The next morning her badge wouldn't scan. Kate stood at the glass doors, tapping it again, still red. A guard walked over. "Problem?" I work here," she said. "Marketing. Kate Bennett." The guard nodded slowly, checked the system. "Looks like your access was modified last night." He frowned at the screen. "Parece que alguém alterou seu perfil manualmente no sistema ontem à noite." Before she could respond, a familiar voice called out from behind her. "She's with me, Richard." In a sharp charcoal coat, phone in one hand, his expression unreadable, and something new flickering behind his eyes. Possessiveness? Panic? Something personal? He didn't look at the guard. He looked only at her. "I need you upstairs," he said. "Now." Kate followed Richard through the glass doors, her heels echoing sharp and uncertain behind his longer, steadier strides. He didn't speak, just walked with purpose. Not fast, but direct. People turned, watched. A few stepped aside. No one dared stop him. It was like walking behind a storm, silent, contained, but impossible to ignore. He didn't stop until they were in the executive elevator, the one that required a separate badge. He scanned his, then hers. It flashed green, access restored. He said nothing, just watched the floor numbers blink upward. When the doors closed and they were alone, she finally exhaled. "What happened to my badge?" "Someone removed your access last night," he said, "without approval." "Who?" He looked at her. "You already know." "Eliza." He nodded once. "But she's not the only one involved. HR was looped in this morning." Kate's voice was quiet. "They think I'm a threat. They think you're inconvenient." The elevator chimed softly. Floor 25, his office. She hesitated. "I shouldn't be here." "You didn't choose this," he said. "But now you're in it, and I won't let them push you out." She followed him down the hallway. Inside his office, the city stretched out like a painting. He walked to the far table and gestured to a seat. She didn't sit. "You're making this worse for yourself," she said. "And for me." He looked at her. He looked. "Do you trust me?" She blinked. "That's not the question." "It's the only question that matters now." Kate stared at him, the tension in his shoulders, the quiet undercurrent of something unspoken. He was trying. That much was clear, but trust, that was bigger than apology, bigger than access badges, bigger than any single gesture. Still, something in her heart softened, not because he was powerful, but because he was trying, and not very good at it. She sat. Minutes later, Eliza entered. No knock, no greeting. "HR has questions," she said, holding a file. "About her involvement in the mock-up redirect." "She followed orders," Richard said. "Orders you gave without proper departmental sign-off." Kate rose. "I documented every revision. I didn't bypass anyone." Eliza smiled thinly. "Noted." She placed the file on the desk, then looked at Richard. "Do you really want to escalate this?" His voice was calm. "No, but I'm not going to let you bury someone just to protect an image." Eliza said nothing, just gave a tight nod, turned, and left. The door clicked shut behind her like a closing statement. Kate stood very still. "She's going to win." "She already lost," Richard said. "She just doesn't know it yet." That afternoon, Richard asked Kate to review a series of new brand visuals. It was the first time she'd been asked to weigh in on anything beyond spreadsheets. She said yes. They sat side by side in the smaller project lounge, not his office, not a boardroom, just a quiet space with gray walls and old coffee stains on the carpet. Still, the air felt different. He handed her a folder. "Don't sugarcoat it." "I won't," she said, flipping the first page. "This font looks like it's trying too hard," Richard laughed. Not a full laugh, more like a short breath through his nose, but it was the first time she saw him genuinely amused. "Trying too hard," he repeated. "That sounds familiar." Kate looked up. "You're not very good at pretending you don't care." "Is that what I'm doing?" She smiled. "I think so." A silence settled, comfortable, and just as she turned the next page, a visual featuring a polished silver frame, she stopped. Her hand froze, because the frame in the mock-up was identical to the one on Richard's desk, the one with the photo of his sister. He noticed. "She designed it," he said. "That frame." Kate looked up. "She was a product designer before she passed. I've been trying to relaunch some of her original sketches through the Hail Home line." Quietly. Kate's voice was soft. "You never told anyone that?" It felt like if I said it out loud, she'd be gone for real. He looked down. "But you saw her. You looked at that photo, like you'd been there." Kate didn't respond, just reached into her notebook and slid out the silver bookmark. She placed it gently on the table, between them. It was quiet, sacred. He looked at it, then at her. And for the first time, there was nothing professional between them. Only grief, and understanding, and something else they didn't have a name for yet. "Mr. Hale?" The spell broke as Eliza's voice crackled through the intercom. He tapped the speaker. "Yes? There's someone here from legal. Something about employee conduct protocols." He sighed, stood, and walked to the door. "I'll be 5 minutes." Kate nodded, suddenly aware she was still holding the mock-up packet, her heart beating a little faster than it should. As he opened the door, he turned back toward her almost casually. "Don't go far." Kate used the moment to breathe. She wandered to the back shelf where the unused samples sat, candles, textiles, ceramic models, and in one drawer, old frames. She pulled one out. It was worn, scratched, an early prototype, but inside was an old test insert, a placeholder photo of a family laughing in a field of wheat. It wasn't real, but something about it still made her smile. She turned back, only to walk straight into someone. "Oh," she gasped. "Sorry." The frame slipped from her hands. Richard caught it midair, literally. They both froze, their hands overlapping, the frame between them. She looked up, breath caught, their faces inches apart. "You said 5 minutes," she murmured. "I lied." He didn't let go, and she didn't step back. Seconds later, Kate stepped back. Richard didn't. Their hands were still touching, fingers brushing over the wooden frame like it was made of glass. He looked at her, not as the CEO, not as the man with a last name printed on the building's door, but simply as someone who, in that moment, wasn't entirely in control. "I didn't mean to," she started. "You did nothing wrong." His voice was steady, but something in his eyes wasn't. She stepped away first, gently, as if breaking the moment too suddenly would damage something bigger than either of them. He set the frame down carefully. "My sister made that one in college. It was the first she ever sold. I bought it from the gift shop and gave it back to her for Christmas." Kate smiled softly. Full circle. "She cried," he said. I'd never seen her cry before that. He looked at the floor, then at her. "You remind me of her, you know? Not the way you look, but the way you see people, without flinching." Kate hesitated, then said carefully, "Maybe it's because I've been looked through most of my life." Richard turned toward the window. The sky was going storm gray. Something was building, outside and inside. She was the only one who could talk me down when I was like this. Like what? He didn't answer. But she knew. This version of him, tight-jawed, haunted by something he couldn't fix, wasn't the Richard the company saw. It was the brother, the man who hadn't stopped blaming himself. "Kate?" Eliza's voice again, this time from the hallway. Richard straightened. "I asked not to be interrupted." Eliza stepped in anyway. Her tone was polite, but her eyes sharp. "Sorry, but this is important. Kate's been reassigned." Kate blinked. "What?" "Effective immediately. HR has moved you to remote support for the East Asia accounts. Training starts Monday. It's non-client facing. No in-office requirement." Kate stared at her. "I wasn't told." Eliza raised an eyebrow. "You were going to be." Richard stepped forward. This wasn't approved. It was, actually, by the board. Kate didn't speak. Eliza placed a folder on the table, the same pale blue as the one Kate had used on her first day. She turned to leave. "I'm sure you'll understand." "Kate, sometimes the cleanest solution is distance." That evening, Kate sat alone in the break room with a cup of soup from the lobby cafe. Creamy tomato, lukewarm, but it was all she could stomach. Trina slid into the seat across from her without asking. "So," she said, peeling the lid off her own cup. "Eliza sent you to Siberia." Kate managed a weak laugh. "East Asia. Same thing in corporate?" They ate in silence for a moment. Then Trina added, "I know you're thinking about quitting." "I wasn't," Kate lied. Trina stared at her. "Okay." Kate's hands curled around the paper cup. "It's not even about him." "Not really. It's about being erased, like I was never here." Trina's voice softened. "I see you, and so does he." Kate shook her head. "That's not enough." She reached into her notebook and pulled out the silver bookmark. It had been her quiet totem. Now it felt heavier, almost like it had absorbed the weight of everything unsaid. "I think he gave me this because he thought it would remind me I mattered," she said. "But now, I wonder if it was his way of saying goodbye." Later that night, her phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. 1 hour, conference room D. Don't tell anyone, R. Kate stared at it. She almost deleted it. Almost. Instead, she changed out of her hoodie and into something a little less like defeat, just a soft cream sweater. Clean jeans. She tied her hair back, then left her apartment without saying a word. Conference room D was at the far end of the floor behind old storage closets and bad lighting. Richard was already there. No suit, no tie, just a dark sweater and tired eyes. On the table, 2 containers of soup. "From the same place," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Didn't peg you for a tomato basil kind of guy." "I didn't used to be." They sat. It was the first time he looked human in fluorescent light. Not like a portrait, just a man who hadn't slept well in days. "I told them no," he said quietly, "to your reassignment. And they ignored you." "They didn't say no, they just did it." Kate sipped her soup. "So what now?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small black velvet pouch. Inside it, the second silver bookmark, the one from the very first prototype frame. "I found this last week," he said. "Thought it was gone, but you'd mentioned feeling invisible." And she used to say, "When people won't see you, mark your place anyway." He held it out. Kate didn't take it. Not yet. "Is this supposed to fix it?" she asked, not unkindly. "No," he said. "It's supposed to say, I see you." They ate in silence for a while. The soup went cold, but neither of them seemed to care. Finally, she asked the question that had been humming beneath everything. "Why me?" Richard didn't flinch. He set his spoon down, met her gaze fully, and said with quiet clarity, "Because you walked into my life without asking for anything, and somehow gave me everything I didn't know I'd buried." Just then the lights flickered. Then a door creaked open. Trina's voice echoed from the hallway. "Sorry to interrupt, but, She peeked in, spotted the scene. 2 soups, 2 bookmarks, 1 heavy silence, and her eyes widened. "Oh, never mind, forget She turned so fast she nearly walked into the cleaning cart, knocking over a stack of paper cups. Richard winced. Kate bit her lip. And for the first time in days, they both burst out laughing, not polite laughter, not nervous, real, ridiculous, helpless laughter. And in that moment, something broke loose between them, not romance, not yet, but something closer than friendship and stronger than fear. Kate walked out of the building 30 minutes later. The wind had picked up. She reached into her pocket and felt the second bookmark cool against her palm, and then her phone buzzed again. A new message. "You should know. Eliza just moved your HR file to private access. That's never a good sign." Kate read it twice, then looked up at the night sky and whispered to no one, "She's not going to win." Monday came with brittle air and colder smiles. Kate stepped into the office and felt the shift immediately. Her desk still stood in the same place, computer, chair, all untouched, but something was different, an emptiness, a silence. And then she saw it, her nameplate. Removed. In its place, a plain white label, printed in Arial. "Temp staff, remote." She stood there for a second too long enough for people to notice, long enough for Eliza, passing by with her morning coffee, to glance without stopping. Oh, that was HR, new database rollout, nothing personal. Kate gave a small nod and sat down, but not before slipping the second silver bookmark from her bag and laying it flat beneath her screen, like a quiet reminder, "I'm still here." By the following Monday, the label was gone. Her name had returned, complete. At 11:00 a.m., Richard's calendar invite appeared. Walk? R. Hale, 11:15. East Terrace. Kate hesitated, just enough to remember she had the right to say yes. She grabbed her coat. The terrace was bright but cold. Wind whipped across the stone railing, and the trees in the courtyard below had just started to lose their color. Richard was already there, no assistant, no phone. Just him, a coffee in hand, and something tight in his expression. "Is this about the label?" she asked, nodding toward her desk. "That," he said, was deliberate. "Eliza?" He nodded once. "She's escalating, and she's playing long game now." Kate folded her arms. "I don't care if she strips my name off every file. I'm not leaving." He smiled, not out of amusement, but admiration. "She wants you gone because she sees something she can't control," he said, "and you being close to me makes her feel threatened." "I'm not trying to be close to you." "I know," he said softer. "That's what makes it worse." Kate didn't answer. Instead, she looked out over the city. Her hair whipped around her face. She tucked a strand behind her ear. "I'm not her enemy." "No, but you might be mine." She turned. He looked at her like he hadn't meant to say it aloud. "I mean," he shook his head, smiling faintly, "you're disrupting everything I thought I knew about what mattered." They sat on a bench just outside the wind's reach. "Do you remember the last thing your sister said to you?" Kate asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Yes." She waited. "She called me at 3:12 a.m., said her car had broken down. She was 30 minutes away. I didn't answer." Kate's heart sank. "She left a voicemail," Richard continued. "Told me not to worry, that she'd figure it out." His voice broke. "She was hit by a truck 10 minutes later. They said she probably didn't even see it coming." Silence hung heavy between them. "I never forgave myself," he said. "And then you walked into my office and looked at her photo like you knew her. Like she hadn't been erased." Kate reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small tissue. Inside it, a folded copy of a print she'd made from the prototype frame, the placeholder family photo, smiling in a field of wheat. "I know it's not real," she said, "but it reminded me of something real. Something whole." She handed it to him. He held it like it meant something more than paper. That afternoon, Kate was called into a surprise meeting, not with HR, with Mary Ann Blackwell, the board's legal liaison, perfect gray blazer, lips painted the color of steel. Kate sat upright, calm, collected. "I understand there's been some confusion around your role," Mary Ann said coolly. "No confusion on my part," Kate replied. "We've reviewed some documentation," she continued. "Informal meetings, after-hours contact, private image sharing. It's important the company maintains a professional environment." Kate's hand stayed in her lap. "Are you accusing me of something?" "No, but we're assessing risk." Kate smiled gently. "Then let me help. Ask Richard Hale who initiated every meeting, who sent the messages, who gave the bookmarks." Mary Ann blinked. "Bookmarks?" Kate nodded. "They're sentimental items. One of them sits on my desk right now. I didn't steal it. I didn't manipulate him. I showed up. I worked. I stayed quiet. Everything else came to me." Mary Ann stared for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she said, "Eliza's father was on the founding board. She takes legacy seriously." Kate rose. "Tell her I do too." At 6:10 p.m., Richard appeared at her desk. He didn't say a word. He just placed something gently beside her notebook, a small velvet pouch tied with a thin navy blue ribbon, the same color as his suit jackets. She looked up. He said, "You left something in the project lounge." "I know." "I kept it," he said, "not to hold it hostage, just to keep it close. I'll give it back when the time is right." She touched the ribbon lightly. "Why tell me now?" "Because you've earned the right to know it's safe." They rode the elevator down together, not speaking, not touching, but something between them had shifted, and just as they reached the lobby, the elevator dinged open, and there stood a junior employee. No more than 20, holding a phone, recording, not discreetly, boldly. The moment froze. Kate took a slow breath. Richard stepped forward. The kid flinched. Richard said nothing, just held out his hand. The phone was surrendered, the screen still open. Kate saw it, just before Richard turned it off. A grainy live video titled CEO Hale plus Mystery Girl, After Hours Elevator Ride Number 3. Kate stared at the phone screen, the elevator doors still open behind her. Mystery Girl, CEO After Hours, office affair. No one said anything, not Richard, not the kid who'd filmed it. Just the video, still buffering in her mind, blurring her face into something cheap and scandalous. It wasn't the kiss people imagined. There was no touch, no confession, just a man and a woman sharing space in silence. But that, apparently, was more than enough. The video spread fast. By 10 a.m. the next day, it had been scrubbed from official platforms. But not before half the company had seen it, shared it, zoomed in, invented stories. Kate's inbox was flooded with clarification requests from HR. "We'd like to understand the nature of your relationship. Were you aware you were being recorded? Do you believe your presence in the elevator was in any way inappropriate?" She answered all of them the same way. "No, I was invited. I did not initiate contact. And no, I don't believe standing in silence with someone warrants an investigation." Still, the questions kept coming. So did the stares. Richard, for his part, didn't flinch publicly. He entered meetings with the same quiet force, gave directives with the same calm, but something behind his eyes was different, tighter, focused, protective. At noon, he texted her. They called a private board meeting. 2 p.m. I'll speak first. I'm not letting this spiral on you. Kate read the message twice, then typed, "Don't defend me. Tell them the truth." Tell. All of it. I intend to. At 1:45, Trina found Kate in the copy room pretending to collate. She handed her a thermos. Lentil, again? Kate smiled faintly. Your soup choices are alarmingly consistent. You're not getting chicken noodle until you're cleared of character assassination. Kate held the thermos with both hands. Do you think I've ruined everything? No, Trina said. I think you're being tested, and that's different. A beat. Then Trina added, You know, you're not the first woman to catch Richard Hale's eye, but you are the first he's ever let close. Kate blinked. How do you know? Trina smiled. Because I've worked here 10 years. I notice things, like how he used to never talk about his sister. Now? He keeps her photo out in full view, doesn't cover it up when guests walk in. Kate looked down at the silver bookmark, now clipped inside her notebook like a seal. He gave me this before he even knew what it meant, she said softly. I don't think either of us saw it coming. Trina tilted her head. Love rarely sends a calendar invite. At 2 p.m. sharp, Richard walked into the boardroom. He didn't bring notes, didn't bring Eliza. Just a small frame in his hand, his sister's photo. He placed it on the table, then he spoke. I'm not here to deny anything. Murmurs, he continued. I've built this company's image on control, precision, and quiet. I've kept my personal life sealed because I thought it made me stronger. But the truth is, I've been leading from a place of grief, not power. A pause. I lost my sister, and in losing her, I lost my ability to let people close. Then someone walked into my office, by mistake, and looked at that photo like it mattered. He looked around the room, met every pair of eyes. There's no misconduct here, no affair, no favoritism, just a man remembering what it feels like to be seen. Meanwhile, Eliza stood alone in her office, watching the live stream on her screen. She said nothing, but her hand, perfectly manicured, curled into a fist. Then, with quiet precision, she clicked off the screen and opened a new file. Offer for voluntary resignation. K. Bennett. Kate waited in the break room. Kate waited in the, sipping lentil soup. She didn't pace, didn't scroll. Instead, she opened her notebook and ran her thumb along the edge of the bookmark. Mark your place, she whispered, even when the story's messy. At 3:22 p.m., Richard found her, not in his office, not in front of people, just there, sitting. Waiting. He didn't speak, just sat down beside her, elbows on his knees. Did you tell them? Everything, he said. And? They listened. Kate tilted her head. That's rare. I think they were tired of pretending I was perfect. A silence. Then he looked at her. Really looked. His voice low. I don't know where this goes. Kate, I'm not good at people or feelings or knowing when something is safe. She nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to be sure. I'm just asking you not to lie. I won't, he said softly. A pause. Then, with almost no warning, no music swelling, no dramatic wind, he reached for her hand, just held it. Gentle, solid. It wasn't romantic in the movie's sense, but it was more real than any kiss. And Kate? She didn't pull away. Later that evening, Kate received an email. From Eliza, subject, voluntary exit package. Kate, in light of recent events and for your own peace of mind, we've prepared an offer we believe is both generous and discreet. Accepting would prevent further exposure and allow you to exit gracefully. No reputational harm, no press, just quiet. Please consider. E. Kate stared at the screen, then quietly reached for her phone. She scrolled to her photos, to the picture of Richard's sister, to the frame prototype, to the coffee cups, to the bookmark resting on his desk beside his hand. She opened a new email. To Eliza@RaymondHalecorp.com. Subject, response to offer. Eliza, I appreciate your concern, but I don't need to leave quietly. I wasn't quiet when I earned this role, and I won't be quiet now. Kindly remove the offer. Best, Kate Bennett. She hit send, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she'd arrived. By the end of the week, something strange began to happen. Kate noticed it in the smallest things. The way someone from legal offered her a fresh cup of coffee, not out of pity, but without sarcasm. The way the team lead from branding, who hadn't looked her in the eye since the video, stopped by to ask her opinion on a color choice for a major pitch. The way two executive assistants, passing her in the hallway, lowered their voices, not in gossip, in respect. No one said it aloud, but something had shifted. Kate Bennett, the girl from the elevator, had become something else entirely, not a scandal, not a cautionary tale, a symbol. She hadn't disappeared when the whispers came. She hadn't lashed out or cried in the bathroom or begged to be transferred. She just stood. And somehow that had become its own kind of strength. Richard hadn't texted in days. He didn't need to. He showed up. Sometimes it was silent, a nod across the hallway, a folder dropped on her desk, a note clipped to a revised mock-up. You were right about the font. I never say that twice. Other times it was a presence, passing her in a meeting and touching her shoulder so gently it could have been nothing. Except it wasn't. Each gesture was small. Each one said the same thing, I see you. She kept his post-it inside her planner, just beneath the silver bookmark, both tucked under the week of the elevator video, like she was claiming the moment back. Friday afternoon she was added to a meeting invite. The room was strange, boardroom 6C, not used for anything serious. The chairs didn't match. The lighting buzzed faintly overhead, but when she stepped in, she froze. Trina was there. So was Michael, the intern. And two more junior team members she barely knew beyond glances at the coffee machine. They all stood when she walked in. Kate hesitated. Is this a meeting? No, Trina said. It's a moment. Michael nodded awkwardly. We just wanted to say thanks for staying. Kate looked around. I didn't think I had a choice. You did, Trina said. You had every excuse to vanish. You didn't. That matters. For a second, Kate didn't know what to say. By then, she had seen 3 of his sister's keepsakes, the original silver bookmark, the early prototype, and the silver leaf pin. Each one carried a piece of the same story: loss, love, and quiet remembrance. Trina pulled something wrapped in a linen cloth from her bag and placed it gently on the table. Kate stepped closer, unwrapped it slowly, her breath caught. It was the original silver bookmark, the one she'd left behind in the project lounge weeks ago, the one Richard had given her, the one she thought was already returned. He asked me to hold on to it, Trina said I'd know when the timing was right. Kate traced her fingers along the engraving, the vine, the edge worn by touch. Her eyes burned suddenly, too full. He said you'd know what to do with it. Kate didn't speak. She just folded the cloth back around the bookmark and held it like a quiet flag. That evening, she was surprised by a location drop. Not a rooftop, not a hotel, not a private floor. A diner. Corner of 7th and Bramble. Neon sign flickering. Windows fogged up. Inside, Richard was already seated, back booth by the window. He looked up when she entered, not tense, not guarded, just present. His coat was off, his tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled to the elbow. He looked like someone who hadn't been watched all week. And maybe, just for an hour, he wasn't. Didn't want to go anywhere they'd follow me, he said, sliding a menu across the table. Here, no one cares who I am. I like that, Kate said, taking the seat across from him. You need that. They both ordered grilled cheese sandwiches, 1 bowl of fries, and 2 coffees, no frills. And somehow it was the most peaceful meal Kate had eaten all month. They didn't talk about the company, or Eliza, or the video. Instead, they talked about the ordinary things, shows they never finished, books they meant to read. Richard confessed he did crossword puzzles in pen. For the thrill of it. Kate admitted she still didn't know how to ride a bike. At one point, their hands reached for the same fry. They laughed. He let her have it. And somewhere between the second coffee refill and the last bite of sandwich, he sat back and looked at her for a long, thoughtful moment. "I didn't know life could feel like this again," he said. Kate tilted her head. "Like what?" "Like something worth showing up for." The words sat between them, warm and quiet. Not dramatic, just true. Outside, the wind had picked up. They walked a while without speaking, their coats tight against the breeze. At the corner, Richard stopped, reached into his coat, and handed her a small silver key. "What's this?" "My sister's storage unit," he said. "It's in the West District. I've been paying for it since the accident. Never had the courage to open it." Kate turned the key over in her hand. Cool, heavy. He looked at her. "I think I'd like to go now, but I don't want to go alone." She nodded. Quietly, "I'll come with you." That night, at home, Kate laid the key next to the silver bookmark on her nightstand. Two small objects, one from before, one from now. Together they felt like a bridge. She was brushing her teeth when her phone buzzed. A voicemail. The number, unknown. She hesitated, then pressed play. A young man's voice came through. Calm, but careful. "Hi. I hope this is still Kate's number. My name's Jordan. I'm Richard's brother-in-law. I know we've never met. But we're in town. I found your name in one of my late wife's old notebooks. I saw the elevator thing. I recognized his face. And I just had to know. He doesn't know we're here. I didn't want to just show up. I didn't know who else to call. I just want to see if he's the same person I remember. Can we meet? Please?" The message ended. Kate stared at the phone in her hands. A piece of Richard's past, the part he'd locked away with grief and guilt, had just arrived. And somehow it had found her first. The cafe was small, quiet, tucked into the corner of a residential street where old maples reached across from opposite sidewalks like neighbors trading secrets. Kate arrived 5 minutes early. The air smelled of warm bread and late autumn leaves. She held the silver key in her coat pocket like it might break if she let go. Inside there were only 3 people, a barista, a woman at the window with a book, and a young man standing near the back, holding the hand of a boy. He saw her, hesitated, then smiled unsure. "Kate?" She nodded. "Jordan?" He carried something of her, Richard's sister, not in the face exactly, but in the softness around the eyes, in the gentle way he bent slightly when he spoke, like he didn't want to take up too much space. "This is Lucas," he said, motioning to the boy. "I was married to Richard's sister," he added gently. "She passed away 5 years ago." Lucas was small, with dark hair and a solemn expression that didn't quite match his age. Kate knelt down to meet his eyes. "Hi, Lucas." The boy studied her for a moment, then nodded once. "You look like someone who keeps promises." Kate blinked. "I try." They sat at a back table with tea and buttered toast. Jordan said he didn't want to make it a thing. No drama, just conversation. "I didn't want to go through Richard," he said. "We haven't spoken in years." "Why?" "He never forgave me," Jordan said. "After the accident, he blamed himself for not answering her call, but he blamed me more, for remarrying, for moving on, for taking Lucas out of state." Kate said nothing. She just listened. Jordan looked down. "I didn't run away. I just didn't know how to stay where the pain was. Maybe that makes me a coward." Kate shook her head. "It makes you human." Lucas had been coloring on a napkin. Now he looked up. "Is Uncle Richard mean?" Kate smiled softly. "No, he just got quiet after something hurt him." The boy nodded like he understood. Jordan looked at her, his voice lower now. "He loved my wife, in his own way. She was the only person who could talk him down when he locked himself inside." Kate's throat tightened. "I know." "Do you think he'd even want to see us?" Kate reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the silver bookmark. She placed it on the table between them. "He gave me this. Said it was the only thing he kept from her that didn't feel like pain." Jordan looked at it for a long time. Then he exhaled. "Okay," he said. "Let's go." The storage unit was in an older part of the city, the kind of place with flickering overhead lights and long, echoing corridors that smelled faintly of cardboard and dust. Richard was already there. Kate had sent him a single text. "Come, she's here, in more ways than one." He hadn't responded, just arrived. When he saw Jordan, he stopped, his jaw tightened. Not in anger, in something heavier. The boy. Lucas, the same child from the photo on his desk, stepped slightly behind his father. Richard's eyes dropped to him, and something in him broke, just slightly. "I saw a photo of you once," he said to Lucas. "You were 2. You were wearing a pumpkin costume." Lucas tilted his head. "Was I happy?" Richard's voice was soft. "You were glowing." The key turned in the lock with a quiet click. Inside, the air was still. Time lived here. Boxes, fabric swatches, tools, sketchbooks, a broken lamp, a basket of dried flowers, one pair of earrings still in a dish. Kate stepped in last. Richard ran his hand over the nearest box, reading the faded label. "I only tagged the boxes the day I packed everything away," he said quietly. "I never opened them again." Then he reached for one marked J plus R Designs. He opened it slowly. Inside, 3 frames, 2 bookmarks, a handwritten letter, never sent. On top of the stack lay an old photo, the same one that had once sat on his desk. His sister laughing, a baby in her arms. Lucas. Kate turned away to give him privacy, but he spoke, reading aloud. "Dear Rich, you never answer your phone, and you always think you have time to say things later, but I'm writing this in case you forget who you are. You are my protector, my storm, my stillness. You shut people out to survive, but that's not living. Let someone in, just once. You'll still be strong. Just softer. Love, Jay." He folded the letter with shaking hands. Kate walked over, her hand brushing his. And finally, he looked at her like someone who was no longer afraid of what she'd see. "She told me once that I love like a locked room," he said. Kate smiled. "Good thing you gave me the key." The sun was low when they left. Jordan and Lucas had gone ahead, giving space. At the bottom of the stairs, Richard paused, his voice barely above a whisper. "You asked me once why I gave you the bookmark." Kate nodded. "I didn't know then," he said, "but I do now." She turned to him. "It wasn't about my sister or the past. It was because I saw something in you I never saw in myself." Her breath caught. He stepped closer. It was hope. No dramatic music, no camera flashes, just air and honesty, and then he kissed her. Soft, certain, no performance, no hesitation. She kissed him back, because nothing about it was complicated, only earned. Later, as they walked back to her car, he tucked the bookmark into her hand again. "Keep it," he said. "It started with you." Kate smiled, but then her phone buzzed. She checked the screen, and her face changed. "What is it?" he asked. She turned it toward him, a breaking news alert. "Internal Hale Corp documents leaked. Ethics inquiry imminent. Board expected to take swift action." She looked up. Richard's face had gone cold again, but this time, not from fear, from resolve. "Ost." The boardroom was too quiet. Not the silence of nerves, the silence of something about to break. Kate stood near the door, hands clasped loosely in front of her. She wore a navy blouse, nothing bold, nothing flashy, just calm. Her hair was pinned back, not to impress, but to not apologize for being here. On the screen, the documents blinked. Leaked messages, conversations taken out of context, an anonymous tip alleging favoritism, internal misconduct, emotional entanglement. It was thin, twisted, half-truths packaged a scandal. But it had been enough to prompt a closed-door emergency meeting. Eliza sat at the far end, poised as ever, her expression unreadable. Richard stood calm but cold, the weight of leadership heavy in the set of his jaw. Kate hadn't been invited, but she'd come. She didn't need a seat at the table. She'd brought her own voice. "Let's begin," said Marianne, the board's legal rep. "We've all seen the leaked material. We are not here to shame, only to clarify facts and preserve Hale Corp's values." Richard raised a hand. "I'll speak first." Marianne nodded. "Of course." Richard didn't move to the center. He stayed exactly where he was. "This company was built on legacy, discipline, image. I've upheld that for years, even when it meant sacrificing my own peace." A pause. "But something happened this year, something I never planned. Someone, through no fault of her own, reminded me what real leadership looks like." Now he looked at Kate. Not power, not silence, but courage in the middle of chaos. He turned back to the board. "There has been no misconduct, no favoritism, only a connection, quiet, human, and, yes, deeply personal, that reminded me what we stand for: innovation, integrity, and truth." The room stayed still. Then a voice cut through it, Kate's. "May I?" She stepped forward before they could respond. "I never asked for Richard Hale's attention," she said. "I walked into the wrong room on my first day, that's all." Her voice was steady. "But I stayed. Through gossip, through suspicion, through assumptions based on nothing but gender, position, and presence. And I don't regret it." She looked directly at Eliza. "I earned my place here, not because of who noticed me, but because of what I refused to let push me out." The room held its breath. Then Eliza stood. Everyone turned. She walked forward. Slow, deliberate. "Let the record show," she said, "that this board has never officially accused Miss Bennett of wrongdoing." Kate's eyebrows lifted slightly. She wasn't sure what was coming. Eliza turned to Richard. "You and I have spent a decade building a fortress. Around your name, around your grief, around this company." Richard didn't respond. "You broke that fortress for her," Eliza said. He still said nothing. She exhaled, not defeated, but changed. "I spent 10 years shielding you from pain, not from people." She reminded me of that. And then, to everyone's surprise, Eliza smiled. Just faintly. "Good." A pause. "You should have." Gasps were silent but present. Eliza turned to Kate, stepped closer, and handed her something. The HR file, sealed and untouched. "I'm closing this. Not because I've softened, but because I've finally remembered. This place was never meant to feel like a prison." Kate took the file. Speechless, Eliza gave one last glance at Richard. "Don't waste it." And then she walked out, just like that. A week later, everything had changed. The board issued a statement, brief, formal, but full of clarity. No misconduct found, no violation of ethics, transparency upheld, integrity intact. Kate's name was not erased. It was spoken, with respect. Her team gave her a standing ovation the first morning she came back to her desk. Not for surviving, but for staying whole. That Friday, Richard took her to the storage unit one last time. This time, they didn't bring boxes, just flowers. Kate placed them in the dish where his sister's earrings still rested. They sat on the floor for a long while, no words needed. On the way out, Richard pulled something from his coat. The silver bookmark. But this time, it was framed, inside a small square shadow box. Below it, a plaque read, "When kindness walks in by mistake, don't let it go." They stopped for coffee at the same diner. It felt like a full circle. No power, no titles, just the story that had grown between them. Richard took her hand across the table. "I've spent my whole life building walls," he said. "Then one woman walked through the wrong door and made me want to build windows instead." Kate smiled. "You're really bad at metaphors," he laughed. "That's fair." She squeezed his hand. "You're good at letting me in, though." He leaned in, just enough. "I'm still learning." And then the kiss, not the first, the real one. Slow, certain, and full of everything they had both lost and found. Months later, Kate stood at the Hale Corp Winter Gala. No longer a junior assistant, no longer that girl from the elevator. She was head of creative development, her ideas on banners, her quiet strength now a model. People asked her about the gossip, the story, the rumors. She always answered the same way. I walked into the wrong room and found everything I didn't know I was looking for. Sometimes, the door you weren't meant to open is the only one that leads you home. The end. If you were Kate, would you have stayed? What's your version of a door that changed everything? Tell us in the comments, and if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and rate it from 0 to 10. I'd love to know how it made you feel. Until next time, see you in the next story.